Beware, all ye digitally enslaved souls, the coming of episode 5 of the Outlaw Crypto Podcast, featuring the crypto wizard himself, Nicholas Gregory, from the dark depths of Mercury Layer. Open your ears and steel your minds, for this is not mere chatter, but the sounding of the horn against the sinister surveillance overlords. Yes, Mercury Layer, a diabolical twist in the tale of Bitcoin, a Layer 2 protocol that dances in the shadows, far beyond the groping tentacles of the blockchain surveillance companies, those vile agents of the worldwide mafia, employed by the gangster computer god to monitor, track, censor, and extort the free souls of the crypto world. Mercury Layer, with its state chains, is a ghost in the machine. It enables the clandestine transfer of UTXOs, those nuggets of digital gold, through a web of key sharing and blinded signatures, a dance of cryptographic stealth that leaves zero heuristic footprints. Oh, how it must burn the eyes of the blockchain bloodhounds, starved of data as they sniff the void where once lay trails to our treasures. Nicholas Gregory, the architect of this grand illusion, this shield against the digital despots, joins episode 5 to unveil the secrets of Mercury Layer. Here lies our cryptic salvation. No longer shall the crypto nobility bow before the altar of transparency, where every coin spent lays bare our souls to the peering eyes of the conspiracy. Nay, we shall transact in shadows, our financial histories ours, and ours alone. Prepare yourselves, listeners of the Outlaw Crypto Podcast, for episode 5 is not just a mere transmission. It is a manifesto, a call to arms, a decoder ring for the oppressed, beckoning us to join the ranks of the unseen, the untraceable, the unbound. Mercury Layer beckons, and with it the promise of a new dawn in crypto privacy and freedom. Beware the eyes that watch, and arm yourselves with knowledge, for the digital night is dark and full of terrors.
Okay, we're here with episode 5 of the Outlaw Crypto Podcast. I'm your host, Paranoia Machinery. This is a podcasting 2.0 podcast, which means that you can support via Lightning Network through the Fountain app. You can stream sats, you can boost, and we also accept Monero donations since we're a privacy-first podcast. Today, my guest is Nicholas from Mercury Layer. Mercury Layer is a Bitcoin Layer 2 created by Commerce Block, and it's one of the more innovative Bitcoin Layer 2 projects out there. It's kind of taken a different direction than many of the other Bitcoin Layer 2s. Nicholas, thank you for coming on the show, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having us. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. My first question, I guess, is before Mercury Layer, there was Mercury Wallet, which was doing state chain swaps. And now it's kind of evolved into Mercury Layer, which is a Bitcoin like whole Layer 2. Can you explain what the difference is between Mercury Wallet's original design and its current state as Mercury Layer?
Sure, there's a couple of differences. I guess the main one is that when we originally looked at state chains back in late 2019, early 2020, there wasn't really much demand for Bitcoin Layer 2s, or it just didn't exist. And the only things that were really doing well in the Bitcoin ecosystem were privacy tools. So we built this. We looked at privacy, and CoinJoins was doing well. There was some renewed talk on the forums about coin swaps, and we thought state chains would be a good way. The way state chains was working at the moment and the ideas that we're presenting would be a good way to work with coin swaps. So our focus really was building a different type of privacy wallet to Wasabi and Samurai and join market. And we felt maybe in a high fee environment, they needed a different approach, because if you move your coins off chain, like via state chains, and you swap them off chain, then you're not subject to high transaction fees. And that was very much the approach, and that kind of worked. I mean, we did get some traction on Mercury Wallet, but not huge. We probably processed about 24 to 25 Bitcoin. I guess in the years we were running it, there was never really a high fee environment, which sounds really funny considering what happened in the last month or so. We've had high fees, and I think the model of coin swaps was a bit confusing to some people. I mean, the way I would describe coin swaps, it's better privacy than CoinJoin and worse at the same time. It's better in that you have no on-chain tape. It's worse in that you don't know what you're getting in the swaps. You could end up with a coin that could get you in trouble. Whereas with coin joins, it's all kind of munged into one big transaction. So you're kind of screwed with coin joins, but then no one can associate you. Well, they can, but it's harder to associate you with a bad coin. And I think for coin swaps to be successful, we would have to have a huge amount of people using them to basically make chain analysis or whatever people are using totally unusable. So, and that was the issue. And then when we were building Mercury Wallet, a lot of people did want to, when I say a lot, a few people reached out to integrate into the Statechain protocol we built. And that was quite hard because we built the API with our sole focus on building this wallet. We didn't really think about interoperability. And then changes in technology happened. So the original Statechain idea we had, Schnorr hadn't come around. So although the swapping was private in that we didn't know who was swapping with who, we did see Bitcoin addresses. Just like in coin joins, you see the Bitcoin addresses coming in, they get munged, so you don't know where they're coming out. We did see Bitcoin addresses. And with Schnorr, we were able to work with some guys in the community and bounce some ideas. And we basically built a variant of something called Music 2, which means that we were able to have a totally blind state chains. So the way, and for us building the back end, that actually made it more like a layer 2, because now we don't see any Bitcoin addresses. All we see is people coming to us asking for like us to co-sign something with them. We see an ID, which is basically just a token. It's just a long hash. We sign it and we don't know what they're doing with it. So we don't see any Bitcoin addresses. And that to us is actually pretty cool. That means we can run a layer 2 legally, and all we are is a blinded signer. We don't see Bitcoin. We don't know if they're using it for money or if they're using it for something weird like ordinals, or if they're just basically signing their grandmother's shopping list. And when you combine those changes with the protocol that we are able to do, there was some demand, specifically some of the Nostra guys. Fiat Jaff reached out a few times. Could he use this in some of the work he does? We thought, okay, let's just focus on a true layer 2, and that's where we are. And we were doing a lot of research as well, integrating state chains with Lightning as well. And then that just seemed like a better approach for us, the company and the ecosystem.
And have you guys completed your work with integrating Mercury Layer with Lightning? Like, is it pretty seamless to go back and forth from like a Lightning transaction to?
No, I mean it's a very complicated thing to do. We've got one proposal that we think is sound that we're going to release in the next month or so, called Lightning Latch, which is a way of kind of swapping from Lightning to state chains. But the true panacea of Lightning and state chains integration is to move Lightning channels around on state chains, which is technically possible, but there's a lot of caveats there. A lot of things could go wrong.
And I guess like the main difference with like state chains and coin joins is that you're actually trading the private keys rather than the UTXOs themselves, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean the UTXOs are being passed around, I guess, when you think of it conceptually. But yeah, we're moving state chains allow the private keys to be moved off chain.
Okay. And then state coins. I know like in Mercury Wallet, state coins were a thing. Are those still like the unit of coin that represents the private key on Mercury Layer as well? State coins are still
we call them state coins internally. But as far as I guess the model is that we don't know what we're signing. We did have with Mercury Wallet, the older version, we did know that it was a public key, a Bitcoin public key. We saw what the Bitcoin was. Right now, we don't have the concept of that. We just are a blinded signer. It's a lot simpler, and a lot of the work is done on the client. But for us, we release a client, and when I say client, we don't release a UI. We just release a blob of code, and people can integrate that into whatever they want.
So as like a Mercury Layer user, once I send my Bitcoin to Mercury Layer and it gets converted to Mercury Layer, like what benefits do I have?
Really is the best way to think of it. And a guy called Shinobi, who you may or may not know, he came up with the word virtual open dimes. So once you create a state coin, you can basically, like an open dime, you can put some Bitcoin on it and you can give it to your friend, he can give it to another friend, and you can swap them, throw them in the ocean. That's what it becomes. And that's the way to think of it, virtual open dimes. So like virtual open dimes, it has some issues. The major issue is that it's a fixed amount. If you've got 1.259 Bitcoin on there. That's all you can send around. You can't break bits off it.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's the best way to think about it.
Okay. And then that, like, the benefits I guess you'd get from using them are they're scalable. Like, are there fees to send them like to and from like a recipient?
We obviously are a business and we need to make money to survive.
Yeah.
We charge a fee for creating one of these state, I don't know what we call them, UTXO sessions, Statecoin, whatever you want to call them. We charge a fee. It's going to be around $50 to $100 a year. That allows you to use this for a year. But then once you've done it, it's yours. You can send it to whoever you want. You do have to interact with us. And there is in the protocol something to protect you in case we vanish.
Mm-hmm.
So if we vanish, you always have this back out transaction, which is basically a signed transaction that allows you to go back onto the main chain.
And then the privacy benefits, like let's talk about the privacy benefits. It sounds like you guys being blind signers is kind of very, very similar to some of these ideas being kicked around for eCash. Would that be an accurate statement, or is that incorrect?
Yes. In terms of privacy, we really don't know what people are doing. So people come to us, they pay. We don't know how they're paying. That it's simple. We use a third party. They can pay with Bitcoin. They can pay with Lightning, and then all we've got is an ID. So that's like a cryptographic hash. We call it a token, but it's not a token in some of the Bitcoin layer 2 sense. But internally we have a token, and yeah, we don't know what they're doing. I mean, it's not permissionless because the server still needs to be active, so we still have to cooperate in any movement of the coins, and it could not be a coin. I mean, just for transparency, happy to admit the majority of the projects that have reached out to us to use this are doing what we'd say tokens on Bitcoins. That's our ordinal type thing. We couldn't filter anyway, so if those guys want to come use it, they use it. We don't see anything. But yeah, from a privacy point of view, it's totally private. We don't know what they're doing.
And you're not allowed to like change the amounts, but what's the minimum threshold to create one of these virtual open dimes, as you put it?
I mean, we don't have a control on that because we don't know what they're doing with them, so they can put anything.
So if I had like a rare Satoshi, for example, that's like an ordinal, like I could send like one Satoshi and make like a one Satoshi virtual open dime.
We don't have a say in that conversation.
Okay.
Which is what you want, because that means we can't censor it. So
yeah,
we don't have the capabilities of censoring it.
Okay, amazing. And how would you say that like it stacks up to eCash? I guess first of all, like in an implementation like Fedimint, it's federated, so you're kind of like trusting like a group of people for your custody. And then in the other implementation, Cashew, it's custodial. Would you say that on Mercury Layer it's non-custodial? Like I have full control of my UTXOs?
Look, this is always what is custodial, non-custodial? That's always a controversial question. I think people have accepted us as proactively non-custodial. So Fedi and eCash are truly custodial. If the operator of the Fedimint, or the majority of the signers of the Fedimint, or the operator of eCash decide to run off with the funds, they can, and there's not much you can do about it. With Mercury, the protocol does not allow that, and we run specific hardware to basically ensure we're running the code we say we're running. But everything has an attack vector. There is in theory, a previous owner could cooperate with us if we've been dishonest and take the funds. But then you would, as the latest owner, current owner, have cryptographic proof that we misbehaved. So that would be fraud. But how do we ensure we've run the code? Well, we delete every key share, and we use an HSM to do that, hardware security removal. We provide a cryptographic attestation to prove that. But that's how the protocol operates. So there is a bit of risk, and every layer 2 has a risk. I mean, we're not only so the Mercury Layer is the protocol. I work for a company called Commerce Block. We do build Lightning software as well, because we see these as I wouldn't say competing technologies, but they're both layer 2s. We work actively. There are similar risks in Lightning. With Lightning, though, you are able to, if you catch someone misbehaving, you do have a justice transaction. Lightning, Mercury does not have that, but you do end up getting cryptographic proof that the server has misbehaved.
Okay. And right now, like one of the more interesting use cases I've been seeing for Lightning is Noster, like people send zaps to each other, little microtransactions to tip each other on this decentralized social media network. Would Mercury Layer be viable for sending microtransactions like that, or would it be prohibitively expensive?
In theory, yes. In reality, no. So one of the problems with Mercury is if you have a one Satoshi zap,
Mhm.
you put that on Mercury Layer, but ultimately, Mercury Layer is time locked. We've set the time lock for 1 year. So at 1 year, you need to redeem it or you lose it. If the transaction fee in the Bitcoin at the moment is higher than whatever is worth, whatever the value is on that Mercury, let's say Statecoin or whatever, then it's not worth broadcasting to the Bitcoin network. You're going to pay more on the transaction fee than you are going to pay on the value of that coin, of that Bitcoin transaction. And that's one of the problems with Lightning as well, isn't it? You could have a channel that has 5 Satoshi and transaction fees are higher. I mean, this is one of the biggest problems we've got right now in Bitcoin layer twos.
I
That's why
think
people are
like
looking
with
at.
Lightning though, there's like security risks once the transaction fees are more than the value of the Satoshis, right? Whereas Mercury Layer maybe doesn't have that same security risk, or
I'm not sure if it's a security risk. There could be an attack vector that you've alluded to that I don't know. But the biggest issue is that it's just not worth it.
yeah.
With Mercury, you're not going to if you know you're not going to pay $30 transaction fee to redeem a $10 stake coin.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then like what kind of use cases do you see for Mercury Layer?
When we designed it, we didn't have ordinals in mind. But obviously, as I said, those are the main people looking to use it. But long term, I think we're 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 seeing like we're seeing high transaction fees, which is
Mhm.
going to happen not just because of ordinals. We're still bullish on Lightning, but I think as transaction fees get higher and higher, things like Mercury, things like Liquid, I mean, Liquid still exists, are going to see transactions, and we think as entities like, and I am, we have spoken to the Fedi guys. Potentially, I'm using Fedi on other things I do, like I think I'm involved with Civkit. I think as a way of federations to talk to each other, to settle with each other, different entities. I think state chains, Mercury should be in that mix. It does have limitations in those fixed UTXOs, but it's instant. I think it has such good trust trade-offs. It's private. I think there's a lot of flexibility there that would put it in. And as a company, that's where we want to see it go. We're gonna, as I said, we run Lightning nodes. We're going to keep on doing research into how we can integrate it better with Lightning. So, I would. The panacea for us, what would make Commerce Block guys happy, is that we can move around Lightning channels and do more things with Lightning. I think that's pretty cool. But as I said, that is a lot of research. There's a lot of problems there that can go wrong. But that's where we see it long term. It's not permissionless in that, but it's censorship. We don't see how people are using it. We're not
Mhm.
pushing away ordinals users or runes or whatever weird stuff they're putting in the blockchain. But I think, look, anything that gets used right now, we're pro it because we want to make sure the protocol can fund itself and operate.
Okay. And like as someone that's working on Mercury Layer and then also Lightning, do you see Lightning as like being kind of like an inter different layer 2 settlement thing? Like for instance, like with Mutiny Wallet right now, they have eCash that they've added through Fedimint, and then you can use Lightning to like interact with these eCash mints, and then like if Mercury Layer is also integrated into Lightning, you could use Lightning to integrate with that, and then some of these other layer twos are also like relying on Lightning to interact with other protocols. Like, do you see the role of Lightning changing from like a peer-to-peer thing to more of a like inter-protocol like settlement layer for all these different layer twos?
Yes, I do. I mean, one of the reasons we didn't work on Lightning years ago is we never bought into Lightning being a product for retail.
Hmm.
Uh, I just never bought into that. Channel management is hard. We do channel management. It's not easy. We do it, and I think we have a few Lightning experts on the team where we get it wrong. So this retail usage of Lightning is probably never going to happen. But that's not a bad thing. I think if you look at Lightning as a protocol to do what it should do, it's not a way to send microtransactions or streaming money around the world with no counterparty risk instantly. It's brilliant for what it is, but in terms of mobile wallets using it, I think that's going to be very hard, and that's why you're probably seeing new work around things like Fedi, maybe other eCash solutions. Maybe there'll be a combination of eCash and you know, some of the BitVM stuff, I think. But the key thing is, I think I'm not worried about. I am worried and I'm not worried. I think so long as Bitcoin's got users and people are using it for peer-to-peer, using it, yeah, innovation will happen.
Mhm.
If there's no one using it, then that's a problem. But let's hope people carry on using it. I mean, it's, Zap's got a bit of, gave Lightning some traction. Maybe these ordinals will. We just got to keep on making sure people are using Bitcoin and not just calling it store of value and hope it keeps on going up.
Yeah, I agree with you on people actually using Bitcoin. Like when I first got into Bitcoin, people primarily used it,
Yeah.
before it like had a lot of value when it was a lot cheaper. And I think like as the price has gone up, like people are more reticent to spend it, and I think that's kind of detrimental to the network. So earlier in the interview, you mentioned Schnorr signatures being a part of Mercury Layer. I know, like
Mhm.
with the most recent soft fork, when Taproot was introduced and then Schnorr signatures, people were talking about how potentially with cross signature aggregation, coin joins could become like cheaper than normal transactions and stuff like that. Do you see any, I guess, progress on that front? Like, and is there a way you could incorporate that into Mercury Layer?
Well, we did.
Yeah.
We Schnorr signatures allowed us to go fully blinded.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we didn't, although I think Taproot may have just been activated when we started. It still takes a while for the crypto, the libraries to be kind of solid. And,
Mhm.
it wasn't just a question of us using Schnorr like easily. We spent a bit of time, my co-founder, CTO, he spent quite a lot of time on working with Bitcoin core devs, looking at potential attacks to what we were doing. And one of the great things is that we did get a lot of support from other Bitcoin core devs, guys at Blockstream, who basically told us, found attacks that we hadn't found. So it takes quite a lot of work to get that. So I think that's a good thing. In terms of cross-signature aggregation, because we don't use multi-sig, we use MPC, multi-party computation. I don't think that will help us. I have looked at cross-signature aggregation. I think that needs another soft fork though, or it needs another change to Bitcoin, and I don't see people really pushing it. I think that makes coin joins a bit more private, but I haven't. I mean, I'm not anti it. I'm not anti any soft fork. If it was up to me, I'd probably allow most soft forks, but they are political. They are hard to push, and I don't see much energy being put into cross-signature aggregation, which is a shame. I mean, we want as many changes as possible to Bitcoin. I mean, I do accept there's some argument to the ossify crowd,
Mhm.
but I think there's more of a risk if we ossify than not.
And what are your thoughts on like these different covenant proposals that are being kicked around right now?
I haven't paid that much attention. I mean, when we went, so take a step back. The original idea of state chains needed any prev out. I think when Ruben Sansol came up,
Mhm.
and because we don't have any prem out, we do have a limited amount of transactions. So we set the time lock to Mercury 1 year. Every time you move or basically let's just say change ownership or do a transaction with us, you lose 8 hours, and that's part of the security protocol. If we had any prev out, that would be gone. You could do it unlimited for 1 year. And we did spend some time with the guys involved with CTV to see if CTV and Enhance would do the same things as any prev out, and those guys said yes, and I don't see a reason why not. And we're pro CTV. I mean, I think those guys are good. It seems well tested, but it's not up to me if it gets adopted. And we can't run a business hoping for an opcode change that may or may never happen to Bitcoin. We've got to work in the present.
There's a 1 year time lock on state coins on these virtual open dimes. Is there a way to roll them over? Like, say I don't want to settle to the main chain. Like, is there any
No,
way to like extend that year or something?
no,
No.
it's just the way it is.
Okay. And then like if people are using these virtual open dimes like in commerce to like trade back and forth, like how does the new, like say I send you like a state coin, how would you know
Mhm.
like how much time is left on that 1 year? Does it like tell me like I need to like spend this or get?
So you basically have, as when you do a transfer, you get a new backup transaction that has a time lock on it.
Okay.
So I think we use n lock time, so that would make it valid.
So it would say like 9 months or something if it was like only 9 months.
So
Yeah.
part of the backup transaction that you got has got basically the lock time and shows you the period that the state coin's valid.
And then, like, I know you guys can't really see what's going on, but is there any way for you to monitor, like, how many people are actually using Mercury Layer to, like, send transactions and stuff?
Yeah, so what we know, and we'll have a block explorer up that shows this. We know when it was created.
Mm-hmm.
We know we know every time they do movements, and obviously, if they decide to come to us via clear their IP addresses, we'll see those IP addresses. We obviously will support a Tor endpoint. People can use VPNs, but it's down to the user what they tell us.
Okay. As far as like Tor being integrated, like, is there? I know with like Lightning, like Tor has latency, and sometimes it's kind of detrimental to your Lightning node to run it over Tor. Is that an issue with Mercury Layer?
Um, I'll tell you about our history. For what we do now, no. But I can tell you, and this is why I've got a lot of respect for the guys like Wasabi and I guess Sparrow and Whirlpool. In the old version where we did coin swaps, where we basically had to create a lot of Tor circuits, especially with the swapping protocol, Tor was tough. And, it was probably, it's very hard to build a protocol on top of Tor like that. And we actually implemented I2P as well for when Tor was being deused. But for what we're doing right now, Tor is probably not going to be an issue. But if for the complicated coin swaps we used to do in the past, it was a clunk. And it's nice to see Wasabi have kind of sorted that out. I think they resolved it by running their own Tor exit node, which is not an easy thing to do because most cloud providers probably wouldn't allow you to do that. But for us now, it wouldn't be an issue now. Building UIs around Tor is an art.
It's a challenge.
I'd say 70% of our engineering on the old wallet was around that.
Wow, that is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Do you guys have any plans to like integrate with Wasabi or Sparrow or like Samurai or any of these privacy wallets so that like once I get my UTXO from one of these coin joins, I could just go like immediately into a Statechain swap?
Well, we wouldn't integrate with them, but I have shilled it to Max at Wasabi. I have said, like, in a high fee environment, you guys may need to look at other stuff. And he laughed, said maybe. We'll leave it at that.
But I mean, there's nothing stopping that from happening. There's like no technical barrier to that happening. It's just nobody's done that.
No, if they wanted to integrate onto, I mean, they wouldn't. I don't know if they could do coin joins on top of stake coins. I'd have to think about that. But if they wanted to do coin swaps, I mean, in a blinded world, you don't necessarily need a coin swap server. You just have to swap with one person, and that's it. You've got the anonymity set of the whole UTXO tree. So that would be simple for people to run.
I've heard like people talk about like doing coin joins into Lightning as well. Like, do you see that as like a viable possibility, as like a way to not touch the base chain, like just go from a coin join into a Lightning channel with your mixed UTXO?
Yeah, I think doing a coin swap into a Lightning channel would help. Yeah, Lightning's interesting because I think privacy on Lightning is mixed. It's obviously forward pricing is pretty good, receiving is bad. But we do pay attention a lot to what's going on in Lightning. Blinded paths will make it more private. And it seems that that's part of Bolt 12 and that's a reality. And we'll see how people can use Lightning. If it becomes too private, does it start getting pushed back or stuff like that? I think that's an important thing to fix.
And what do you think about like privacy ever being improved upon, like Bitcoin's base layer? Do you think that ship has sailed now that Wall Street has kind of come in and started the ETFs? And
I don't think there's much they could have done. I mean, I don't think confidential transactions would ever have been implemented because of there's a very small, I can't remember what the attack vector is, but there's a very small risk you lose auditability of the blockchain. But I think that was never going to happen. But yeah, I don't think there was any possibility of things changing there.
With the way Mercury is set up, where you guys are like blinded signers, you mentioned that like legally you can do that because you can't really see what's happening and what the users are doing. Is there any like attack vector that you see for like regulatory attacks from overzealous regulation?
I'm happy to tell you, and I guess in the past we obviously ran these things offshore, but that's not an option anymore. We have had legal opinions to run this in the UK because we're just a blinded signer. There's no challenges there. But laws can change. I mean, do I see Mercury as a true privacy tool? I don't even see it that way, to be honest myself. You'd have to do stuff on top of Mercury, like run a coin swapper, And we wouldn't do that anyway. It's not something we want to touch anymore. And I think there are better people to do that than us anyway. So.
And Mercury is
I
like
mean,
open source, so if somebody were motivated to build something like that, they'd be able to.
yeah, it's fully open source. I mean,
Nice.
yeah, even the HSM software, the hardware stuff, we've open sourced. We encourage feedback and stuff, and there has been feedback there. We haven't released it yet, but some cryptographers have came out and said, look, maybe you could do this better, maybe the cryptography would be improved. And once we implement it, we'll give them shout outs and say thank you publicly and show it in the code.
You just mentioned something kind of interesting. It's like building stuff on top of Mercury Layer. If somebody were to build like a coin swap on top of Mercury, it would just be like a coin join using state coins, or like how would that even look?
Well, with blinded, it'd be very simple. You wouldn't need to do the whole, you know how the whole Wasabi Samurai thing where people register interest and then you collect. You'd only have to swap once.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be just like a Telegram group where you meet other people with the same denominations and you do like a batch transfer where you swap them individually. As you know, as a privacy expert guy, privacy only works if you get a large number. So I think that's always the challenge. Wasabi and Samurai's privacy is fairly good because they've got network effect. They've got a lot of people's coin joining. So I think that's always the issue with swapping and stuff. It's how do you get that network effect of enough people to make it private.
As far as Mercury Layer goes, like you just mentioned Wasabi. Wasabi has like a coordinator, right? And then Correct. Samurai had one, but I think they just decentralized it like recently. It's called Soroban. It's like a new decentralized coordinator. With Mercury Wallet, you guys had like a centralized server that kind of acted as a coordinator to do the state chain swaps. What about now, like with Mercury Layer? Is it still going through one server? Do you have plans to decentralize it if it is only going through one server?
We have, obviously, for failover redundancy, we have multiple servers, but ultimately we are centralized to do the blinded signing. People have asked us how to run their own. I think we've done the process of like creating Docker containers to make it easier, but they're not fungible. So like if you were, give an example, if you were interacting with, say, the Commerce Block Mercury Layer server to basically do blinded signing, it's not like you could switch to someone else's one. So, I think we would, in an ideal world, we would see lots of Mercury Layers run servers, but they would have to have some sort of reputation associated with them, because some may be faster, some may be not as trustworthy. I guess you could say it becomes a bit like the Lightning Network, where not all nodes are equal. Some are being run on a Raspberry Pi, some are being run on industrial hardware that's available 24/7. You run into those challenges, but we would like to see other people run them. I mean, that would be success in the protocol. I think that would benefit us ultimately.
Running a Mercury Layer server then is more kind of like an eCash mint, I guess?
There's a lot more going on. So, give an example, you'd have to run a server that keeps state management of well, first of all, it has to collect money. So you'd have to run a BTC Pay server instance or work for a payment process to collect funds. You'd have to run a database that keeps track of all the coins, and then you need dedicated hardware HSM modules that runs. I mean, that's the way we do it. You could change things. You could have a federation instead of HSMs. You could be less trustworthy than us and just not bother with the HSM and just say, hey, trust me, things like that. But
so an HSM is what, like a secure element or something like that, but just on like an actual server?
It's a back-end ledger. I won't say ledger because people don't trust them. A back-end Trezor, things like that. It's a back-end. It's dedicated hardware to do secure deletion.
Okay. And I guess like if you couldn't just run that like on a VPS, then you'd need like a specific server that has that hardware.
Yes. So what we did is we've open sourced this so people can do it. We built this on Intel SGX. So if you have a VPC, a cloud provider that supports bare metal machines with Intel SGX, you could run that. But it's not easy to do. You have to change settings in the BIOS. It's hard work. Yeah. I mean, this is one of the reasons why people say, why don't you use a federation? I go, well, you've got to find other trustworthy federations members who want to run something 24/7, who are going to do the whole high availability, all that kind of stuff. And then if they're dishonest, because it's blinded, we wouldn't know who's dishonest. So there's a lot of challenges there.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of I don't think federations are so bad, but I feel like they have a bad reputation. Like when people hear federated, they kind of just don't trust it. They think like, no, it's just custodial. Like even though it may be a little bit better than just straight custodial.
I think they have a place, but not all federations are equal. I think Blockstream, they'd be the first to tell you that running a federation member for Liquid is hard.
Mm.
It's dedicated hardware. I think Fedi are going for kind of smaller federations with less money. So in theory, the people running Fedis could be a collection of people using VPS servers.
Mm.
But you shouldn't store much money there. Yeah? I think it depends how much. I mean, if you're going to store your life savings on a federation, you'd want something pretty robust, more the liquid elements approach rather than Fedi.
Earlier we were talking about Lightning Latch, which is the Lightning integration with Mercury Layer that you said you guys are releasing in the next month or so. Once Lightning Latch is released, like how will that improve the Mercury Layer protocol's integration with Lightning?
Well, so essentially, I'm trying to think, why did we look at Lightning Latch? A few people wanted to do like ongoing sales of it. So you've got Statecoin,
Mm.
now you want to sell it. The guy who comes and buys it to you pays you in Lightning. We wanted a way to basically facilitate that in the protocol. Now, our protocol doesn't necessarily facilitate that. You can have a bit of client code that does like an atomic swap of receiving that Lightning payment and selling that Statecoin, which could be a rare sat, an ordinal, or just some Bitcoin on there.
And you mentioned that you keep bringing up ordinals and saying that they're interested in using Mercury Layer. Like how soon do you predict we may see something like that on the market here?
Well, I can tell a few ordinal projects contacted us. So, and the only non-ordinal contract project, I wouldn't call it a project, person who contacted us to integrate was Fiat Jack from Nostra.
Okay.
So, yeah, the guys that we speak to are Fiat Jack from Nostra and a few ordinal projects.
And are you allowed to speak on like what he has planned as far as Mercury Layer and Nostra go, integrating?
I mean, look, he's not on Twitter anymore, and I'm not really active on Nostra. But no, he's always been a fan of the protocol. He's a tinkerer, he's a hacker. He likes bouncing ideas. I don't know what he's actually trying to do, but he's always been I think I don't always agree with him. Like his critique of Lightning, I'm probably not as extreme like him, but he's always been very supportive of Statechains. I've never met him. He just contacts us. We speak on Telegram, speak on Twitter. I think he's just a tinkerer. He's a hacker.
How much interest have you seen from the Bitcoin community in Mercury Layer?
It's mixed. I mean, some people don't like our trust model. Some people do. I think people recognize it as a useful tool. There are some Bitcoin core devs. I know it's very nice of them. They came in, and I don't know if they're Bitcoin core devs, but Blockstream employees as well. They came in, looked at the protocol, and they showed genuine interest. People from Spiral as well. Steve Lee, for example, from Spiral, when he was in London a couple of months ago, he came in and we did casual whiteboard sessions. I think there's genuine interest. I mean, it's been more supportive. I mean, we're not lying about the trust model. We say, look, there's a risk that we want to be open. So I think it's just the whole layer 2 of Bitcoin is there's not one obvious solution that's going to scale Bitcoin. Every solution has challenges, whether that's Lightning, sidechains, and Mercury. Some people are talking about Arc. I think that has some issues as well. So it's still in the state of flux, but I think people recognize it as one of the potential tools. It's clearly not the solution that's going to scale Lightning, scale Bitcoin, but when you add all these bits and bobs together, we may get something.
Okay. And then what do you think of these roll-ups that are being proposed? Like there's optimistic roll-ups, there's like zero knowledge roll-ups that are being proposed as like Bitcoin layer 2s as well. Do you see like a role for them as well?
I mean, look, zero knowledge proof is very useful technology. Arguably, we do some of that in Mercury anyway to validate the transactions, the transitions as we swap coins.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of it being the panacea that solves Bitcoin, I don't think so. I think it's a bit oversold. If we wanted the Bitcoin blockchain to validate rollups, we'd need a soft fork, and I'm not sure if the optimizations are going to be that significant. And that's been our thing, and we've looked at BitVM to maybe make Mercury trustless, a bit more trustless, and didn't see anything. But look, I don't want to be negative on it, but I think the new energy in the space is good, because maybe somebody's going to come out with something better over time. Innovation leads to more innovation. This is why I'm not necessarily anti some of the ordinal stuff. Maybe they're going to raise money that gets more people looking at this space and maybe comes up with something newer or better.
I think ordinals personally are kind of crazy, but I am wildly entertained by watching the impact that ordinals are having on Bitcoin and also Bitcoin development, because like people can say what they want about the UDI group and Opcat and all these things, but they are kind of driving innovation that otherwise wouldn't have happened by trolling the shit out of Bitcoin developers. So
Yeah, and that Taproot Wizards, I don't know the company Taproot Wizards, but I have spoken to their CTO, and I've forgotten his name. He's got like a Twitter handle, Ringo or something.
oh, okay, yeah,
You know,
I know who he
he's
is.
really, yeah, he's a really bright guy. He's if you have him on the payroll, he's gonna maybe innovate stuff that's could be game changing. He's a tinkerer. You need more people like that funded building stuff. You may not like what they're building, but if it keeps them going for a few years, maybe innovation will come from that.
What's your opinion on like people being priced out though because of these ordinals and tokens and stuff being launched on Bitcoin, kind of maybe in the not technically best way to do it?
I have mixed views on that. So I have a side project which you probably know about, Civkit, that's funded by a guy called Ray Youssef and his company called No Ones, and they want us to build the goal over here is to build a peer-to-peer exchange for people in the global south. Now, it's hard because a lot of them are not going to use non-custodial Lightning with these transaction fees. They're probably going to use Wallet Satoshi, which big fan of the Wallet Satoshi, but it is custodial. But there is a challenge there. But I don't think there's anything we can do about it. It may be ordinals pricing out, but in another world, it could have been large Lightning channels. It could have been big institutions settling. It could just be normal users. I mean, we've always known about this problem in Bitcoin. It's not new. It's probably annoying that we're stuck with these stupid JPEGs on blockchain for life. But we always knew we'd have to fix this problem if we went to a hyper-Bitcoinization world. And maybe this has brought the problem earlier. But yeah, it's a problem. It is a problem. I can tell you the guys that I deal with at No One's, Ray Youssef's team, they're concerned because they're dealing with guys from in Africa, Latin America. They're not going to pay these transaction fees. So unless something like Fedi or Lightning Bolt 12 or maybe a combination of that with Statechain solves this, people are going to be priced out, and these people are going to use Tether and Tron, two very centralized solutions where they can be rug pulled or regulatory pulled at any point in time.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask you, like, since you're working with No Ones and they're like a very famous peer-to-peer exchange, like, what path forward do you see for peer-to-peer trading? Because I don't think peer-to-peer trading is going to disappear. People are just going to start doing it in a different way.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, so No One's is, I think, obviously centralized, so they have to comply with KYC and AML, and the reason they're funding Civkit is they want a tool for people who can't be on their platform. Now, my interactions with them, and they've taught me a lot about the ecosystem. Some of the biggest trading venues in the world are WhatsApp, WeChat, and Telegram.
Yeah.
And I always assumed it was $20 here and there. It's millions of dollars a day, which is quite phenomenal. And the trust mechanism is the admin of the Telegram group. These people are not going to use Bitcoin at these transaction fees. So, but I'm more confident than not confident, and maybe this is me showing my age, but I did a master's in distributed computing, and my first job was starting a PhD for UUNet. We never thought, and this is many years ago, that the internet with its current protocols would scale one bit. And IP6, which was made in the 90s, isn't really fully rolled out. I worked for a company that pioneered voice over IP. Their top management, all their senior lab rats thought voice over IP would never work on TCP. Yeah, I think we got there in event by optimizing it. So I think a lot of the Bitcoin community are hoping that someone invents something magical, like something new in Bitcoin, something new in Lightning, or something like zero noise proof and it's going to scale it. It won't be something like that. It will be hard grinding, optimizing Bitcoin Core, optimizing state chains, optimizing Lightning. That will get us. And we have to be open-minded. Maybe Lightning, sorry, not Lightning, I'm big on Lightning. Maybe Bitcoin doesn't scale. Maybe the only way to scale it is by allowing atomic swaps to Monero and Litecoin. And we'll have to just accept that. It's not what I want, it's not what I do every day, but we have to be open to it. And if we're open to it and honest about it, I think we'll get there. And it may not be what we wanted.
You are kind of a fan of Monero, if I'm not mistaken. I saw you posting something about how you'll always run a Monero node.
There's a few guys I like in the Monero community. I'm a big fan of Sir Hack. I read his book, and yeah, I run a Monero node. I don't think Monero, I think Monero's got a lot of attack vectors. I'm not convinced on their, what's their random ASIC miner, RandomX?
RandomX, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sold on that because I think if there was enough money in Monero, someone would build an ASIC for it. But look, I love the team. I love the way they do funding, the CSS model where you pay for something being built. I think it's cool, but they're experimental, and I follow some of the Monero guys. They're not really into numbers go up. They take more risks than Bitcoin because they're more about payments and they accept their risks. But I don't think I have an issue where Bitcoiners get so close-minded and say Monero's a shitcoin. I'm like, no, it's not. There's some brilliant people there, and there's a lot to learn. And there's a high chance Monero. I think most people in Monero would probably hold more Bitcoin than Monero, and don't see Monero outperforming them from a pricing standpoint of view. And there's no argument there. But sometimes people get a bit religious and dogmatic, and it gets silly.
Yeah, no, that's...
I am a fan of Monero. I run a node on my Linux machine. I love the tech. I love what they're doing. Love some of the guys involved, like the guy who builds Cake Wallet, or the guy who funds Cake Wallet, Vic Sharma. Yeah. Sir Hack, I'm a big fan of his. Yeah, he wrote the book Mastering Monero. Good guys.
Have you been paying attention at all? Like in the last month or so, Monero was having transactions go through the roof. It went from 30,000 transactions a day to 130,000 transactions a day for a week, 10 days at a time. Did you see how Monero's scaling technology kind of handled that sudden influx of transaction volume, and how the dynamic block sizes expanded, and then fees stayed low even though there was this additional volume that should have caused congestion? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, yes, it handled it quite well, but now Monero, I run a pruned Monero node. Mm-hmm. I think my node takes about 60 gig. So that is a problem though, having it. And Monero doesn't really have any layer 2s. The only layer 2 I ever saw was Tari. Was it Tari? And that's been around for a year, and that hasn't really moved. There's no scripting language to build layer 2s like Lightning on Monero. I don't know if that's a problem. It did look like it was a DDoS attack. It did look like it was, I wouldn't say state-sponsored, but someone was trying to flood it with a lot of transactions so that they could de-anonymize it a bit. At least they're acknowledging it as I think it's great for the ecosystem that you've got a dedicated team that's dedicated to privacy and not necessarily scalability. And there's learnings there. But my knowledge of that really came from watching a couple of Monerotopia shows. And I just tried to listen in and try to understand it. And I think it was great, but that was it.
Do you think that there's any innovation happening in Monero that could be ported over to Bitcoin to kind of improve Bitcoin's privacy, whether it's on the base chain or on a layer 2 or even a layer above layer 2, like a layer 3?
I'm not convinced that. I think the dynamic block size is probably not relevant to Bitcoin, but the tailor mission, I think Bitcoiners should always look at the tailor mission of Monero. Maybe we may need that in the future. I think we've got to be open to it. I'm trying to understand Seraphis, but I haven't been able to put in the required hours to learn it. I think that's going to be good. What got me into Monero quite seriously was they were funding I2P many years ago. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And that kind of didn't get the funding needed. I would like to see I2P still funded, because I think we need an alternative to Tor, and that's not me knocking Tor, but Tor is being attacked all the time.
I would say that there's a fair amount of I2P adoption within the Monero community. There's a lot more people using Tor, but there are like there's wallets and stuff that use I2P, and you can.
The libraries for I2P are not well supported. We integrated it into Lightning, and it just not Lightning to Mercury. It was rough.
Mhm.
It just was rough. I mean, this is not me knocking them, but it's funny how we always rip into open source software, but then we forget it's free, and we forget there's guys busting their ass for nothing. But yeah, it is rough. It's quite hard to build on. We spent maybe 10 days just trying to get it compiling on multiple environments.
You mentioned some limitations using Tor with Mercury Wallet before you transitioned to Mercury Layer. With I2P, did you guys have better performance?
What we found,
design?
and this is just our vector, we found Tor, when it's working well, was faster than I2P. But when Tor, I mean, I'd say the standard deviation I2P was more guaranteed. You always, and I don't know if it's because I2P has a lot less users, but we found I2P, even though it was a bit slower than Tor, was consistent in its. There was no wavering in its kind of like, the timings. And when you're building a wallet, it's better that something's slow than all over the place, because when it's slowed, you can put timeouts. You're building a swap server, you can say, okay, well, swaps are taking this long, you can set the timeout to say 2 seconds. With Tor, because of its unpredictability in performance, we had no idea what to set the timeouts. Sometimes we'd set them high, sometimes we'd set them low. Yeah, you could say make them dynamic, but that's very hard for the UI experience. But that was just our experience. It was slightly slower, but more deterministic, which made it easier. But the library support wasn't as good, which made it harder.
Okay. Good answer, I guess.
And this is all a year and a half ago, so it could have changed.
You seem to have a pretty keen interest on privacy and privacy technologies. What about these mixed nets that are being proposed, like Cats and Post? I know there's a few others. There's even a crypto project called NIM that's a mixed net. Do you see mixed nets as being possibly like a better alternative than Tor or I2P for anonymous networks?
Yeah, I mean, we looked at them. I'm a bit out of date at the moment. I haven't really paid attention. Although if I'm spending any time on this stuff, it's not mixed nets. It's things like peer-to-peer messaging. I've been looking at the stuff that, funny enough, Bitfinex released, Keat. That's built on? What's that built on? Hole Punch. So we're looking at that for Civkit, because we need to do encrypted chats for dispute resolution between people doing peer-to-peer. So that's where I'm spending a bit more time. When we were still in the weeds of Mercury Wallet, focusing on the wallet, we were looking at mixed nets. It wasn't NIM we looked at, it was another one we looked at, one that David Chow associated with. Yeah, again, they were interesting, but their uptake was quite small. And as you know, anonymity comes from the collective. The more people you have.
Yeah.
But we're not using Keat on Civkit, but we're open to it, and I think the Hole Punch guys, they've only just come out of alpha, and Keat is a bit rough, but I think we're definitely paying attention to Keat and stuff like that, because I think that's needed. If you can have a peer-to-peer, for peer-to-peer marketplace, you're going to need some sort of encrypted chat for dispute resolution, and that's going to have to be private peer-to-peer.
Now, I was paying attention to Civkit a little bit. I haven't been keeping tabs on it too much lately, but as I understood the original design, like it was going to be working over Nostr for encrypted chats and stuff like that. Is that still like in the roadmap, or?
Yeah, I mean, the encrypted chats on Nostr is not ready yet. I mean, look, Nostr is being used in a lot of things, and a lot of it's not ready. So what we're doing is we've built our own chat, which is, when I say our own chat, very basic PGP based, and that's with a mindset that someone's going to do a better chat application than that, and then we can switch over that. I mean, look, Civkit's not about doing chat; it really is about a reputation system, and allowing people to trade peer to peer, but then realizing that a peer-to-peer marketplace can't be that big, but your reputation can move from one marketplace to another. So if one gets shut down, but really it's about creating these small little. It's replicating what we see in the global. Well, when I say I'm not in the global south, clearly you know by my accent. Like obviously Ray Youssef's involved. He's our source of requirements. It's replicating what he sees in the global south, and improving on having people trade on Telegram all day. And basically making that a bit better, having a reputation system because like if me and you were trading on, let's just say a Telegram group, that Telegram group vanishes and we go to another, we're starting from scratch. We lose our reputation. we're just a bunch of nobodies again. And I think having that kind of public key reputation system move around, and it's hard because one of the problems with reputation systems, they're public key based. I could sell my public key to you. You'd have to trust me on the private key issue, but that's the problem they're trying to solve. And to me, it was just interesting. I think it's good for Bitcoin. It's good for the stuff we build, because obviously I'm trying to integrate some of the tech that I build day to day at Commerce Block into it.
Mm-hmm. And how far along is Civkit? Like, when can we expect to see like a beta or alpha version come out?
Yeah, I think we're about a month away. Well, I'll be honest. Originally, when I started working on it, I was very casual about it. I didn't put that much energy, and it took quite a while, and we didn't know really where to start on. Originally, some of the guys on there were much more into building a reputation system, but then, as we've moved, we've changed. We've got much more. We look at a lot more what the other systems are doing. I mean, and in a lot of respect, there are people doing good peer-to-peer stuff. People ask us why not just use RoboSats? To be honest, I looked at RoboSats. It's brilliant. And I looked at RoboSats a year ago when we started on Civkit. It wasn't really, it was rough. Mm-hmm. Those guys are grinding. And this is just something that we wanted to build with a combination of Ray and Ray's funding the devs. And he wants something that can extend no one's, and that's why we're not using RoboSats. We want something that we can potentially plug into no one's and extend their use cases, to expand the people they can trade, to get their existing traders to trade with.
So you guys are a lot further along than I thought. I thought you were going to say like another year, but you're saying next month. So like right now, well,
when I say next month, it's going to be rough. Not the prettiest UIs, but yeah.
Fair enough, but I mean, that's crazy that you guys are that far along. Like, so right now, what shape is it taking? Like, you mentioned something about eCash with Fedimint for Civkit. Like, is that how you guys are like strategizing to the trades to take place, or like, what do you guys have in mind?
Well, we're going to go live with Lightning straight away, and people would trade with Lightning. But look, we're not in the dark. We know Lightning's having challenges. We know if this fee situation continues, we know that right now, if we go live, all the users will be using Wallet Satoshi. And as I said, respect to Wallet Satoshi, but that is a risk. So, and we probably think we could see, if you were to ask us today, and this is always changing, if we were pushing production today, we would probably want Civkit nodes to run on a federation. And the federation is not just to issue eCash tokens, it's to deal with escrow. How do you deal with escrow? Clearly, no one's going to want to be an escrow agent. You would use a federation of trusted people that you trust. Me and you get into a big trade. If we trust 3 people, they would be our escrow. It's that, and so we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We'll work with Fedi. Fedi's quite modular. They've designed it so it can Fedi a lot of things. I'm British, as you know. One of the guys behind Fedi is Obi. He's kind of he's British as well, so I think he lives abroad now, but he was in London, so I've spoken to him. We're trying to marry up things there as much as possible.
I guess with Civkit, like you're mentioning that you're focusing primarily on no ones, but would it be possible to use it with like a different peer-to-peer market?
Yeah, absolutely. It's open source. I mean, look, I want not that I have an issue with Ray. I argue with him a lot on Twitter, which people joke about. But we would like other people, supporting Civkit. There's no company called Civkit. There's a website, which I have, and there's a GitHub repo. Ray's funding a couple of devs. If other people wanted to fund a couple of devs, I'm not paid, but obviously I work for Commerce Block. But I see it as a worthwhile few hours a day. We want the team to grow bigger and not just be. Ray doesn't want this just to be a no one's thing. We'd like as many people as possible. There's nothing proprietary in Civkit. It's just a GitHub repo. I mean, look, I don't think you want to make a marketplace proprietary because you get a bit in trouble. The model is it's an instance of BTC Pay server. There's not going to be a centralized order book. In fact, I won't be running an order book. Clearly, Ray won't be. No one's won't be. The vision is that some of his top traders do.
I don't know if are you aware of basic swap DEX and the Particl marketplace?
The things I look at, obviously, I look at RoboSats. In the old days, I used to look at BISC. We do spend a lot of time looking at TDX, but that seems more focused on the decentralized identity, which is very important. I mean, that's the hardest problem to solve in this space.
The decentralized identity?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of ideas, a lot of papers written, there's a lot of academic research. I mean, I do, because I like Monero, I do look at some of the Monero ideas, but they're more they're more kind of like atomic swap based dexes. Monero, like Javiano, looked at that.
Basic swap dex is like an outgrowth of the Particl project. Particl is like a privacy coin. I don't know like how well known it is. It's pretty small, but what they're doing is building like some pretty interesting dApps. Particl Marketplace uses like they have their own like private network, and it's like a decentralized network where like each wallet is a node, but you can like launch a marketplace on there, and then you can have like private marketplaces, and you can sell stuff with like no middleman. There's like an escrow system and things of that nature. And Basic Swap Dex is a Dex that uses a lot of like the same tools. They have like a private network that connects the different nodes so that they can do trustless trades. Aside from BISC, I would say that Basic Swap Dex is probably the only other like truly decentralized exchange that exists.
There is one privacy coin. I don't know if you consider it a privacy coin that wrote an interesting DEX, which I am familiar with. I don't know if do you know the project called Decred?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a big fan of the guy behind Decred. Was it Jake Yoakum-Wire? I've spoken to him a couple of times. They've built a very interesting DEX that sounds like the DEX you've just mentioned.
Okay.
Got Decred.
Yeah. I haven't really looked into the Decred Dex, but I was talking to a guy from Decred on Twitter the other day about it, and I was saying if you add Monero, like that'd be awesome. So
I think they're adding Monero. I saw some noise about that.
That
3 weeks.
Well, I was talking to him about. So yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, but I haven't tried that.
I'm a big fan of the Decred guys. I think technically, again, not financial advice, but their atomic swap decks. I looked a bit, especially in the early days of Civkit. I mean, it's more atomic but swap. We want something a bit more lightning based, more for retail, kind of the people who trade on no ones, gift cardy type stuff and instant. But yeah, I did look a lot at what the Decred guys are doing, and they've got some really bright minds. The Decred team. I think a lot of people forget that version 1 of Lightning was based off their code.
Wow, I was unaware of that. That's awesome. Like, is there anything stopping something like Civkit from plugging into these decentralized exchanges that are like actually really decentralized for these peer-to-peer trades, or is that not feasible?
There's nothing stopping Civkit doing that. I guess we're not thinking that because, I mean, look, the way I look at things like, and I'm looking at this from what I understand of Decred and BISC, is that those are kind of like slower. They're reliant on like atomic swaps. You don't trust an exchange until you've got like essentially 10 minutes, maybe an hour confirmation. The market that Civkit is timed is more like RoboSats. These are for people selling small value for gift cards. It's not for the large scale type of stuff. Long term, could they merge? Yeah, I try not to think too far ahead, but I mean, there's many ways you can cut this. I mean, we do need more dexes. I think we all know that centralized exchanges are getting harder and harder to use. They want more and more information about you. It's just, I mean, I live in the UK now. I have to give my financial history for the last 10 years to get an exchange account these days. It's not really scaling.
Yeah, and like in the global south, for instance, like a lot of people just don't have the documentation needed. Like KYC is keeping these people unbanked because they don't have, like a bill that says their residence on it, or like they don't have
and it's
an ID.
And it's not like we need to bring crypto to them. They're doing it as we speak. They don't need us. We just we need to make it so that they don't use Tron and Tether.
Yeah,
because there are risks there. I think we both know them. We want them to be using the same tools we use, and that's essential for our growth as an ecosystem.
The whole point of like them being unbanked because of KYC, like bringing KYC to these crypto solutions and then excluding them from those, is kind of just cutting off the only way that they're able to transact, which to me is not the mission that crypto is supposed to fulfill. Like crypto is supposed to lower the barrier of entry to a global financial system for people that are in these situations where they don't have the right documentation or an ID.
I mean, I'm learning a lot about how they operate, which is very different than what your people tell you on Twitter. I mean, the lead dev now for Civkit, he was in Kenya, now he lives in Sri Lanka. It's just a different ecosystem. You can't just think, okay, let's give them Bitcoin, they're going to run with it. There has to be a use case. There has to be a path, and it has to fit into their business models as well.
Do you see any role for Mercury Layer, like Statechain swap tokens being usable for like peer-to-peer trading like this?
Not today, but long term. I mean, okay, so when I say only ordinals and fiat Jeff. There's been a few other guys that want to do kind of Azteco. Are you familiar with a company called Azteco? But
Yeah.
gift card Bitcoin.
Yes.
Yeah. As I said, you can put an ordinal on a state chain. You can put like a Bitcoin gift card. Why that would be a good idea in, say, a Civkit environment is instead of, for a large amount of Bitcoin, you don't have to wait for 10-minute block times, 1 hour confirmation. It can be instant. Now, if you speak to Bitcoin exchanges, one of the problems is, sending out money. They batch them. It's clunky. It doesn't really work. I think it slowed. It makes the user experience on a DEX not the best. I mean, I think that's one of the. If you use any of these like atomic swap dexes from, say, Monero to Bitcoin, they're clunky because of the wait times of getting the atomic swap confirmed. If you're now swapping some Lightning for a Mercury Statechain, which has got some Bitcoin on it, and that's instant, I think that helps a lot. So, yeah, we had a few conversations with people doing that. I think that's very early, but that would be interesting, I think. But we wouldn't build that because that is dealing with money and money transmission. It's something else to build. So we definitely had those conversations. And this is all on Telegram. This is not like me talking privately to people. 90% of the chats is just in our Telegram group, people bouncing ideas. We're saying, yeah, that can work. And we're pointing the way in the code and how that's possible to be done.
For your work on Civkit, when Civkit comes out, like it's going to be available for Linux. It's going to be available for mobile. Like how are you guys planning on releasing it?
The release one will just be it'll be just like a bunch of Docker images that people can spin up a node. That we don't have in the roadmap. Bear in mind, Civkit is not the biggest team in the world. It's funded by Ray. Ray has to basically make sure no one's is making money before Civkit. But there's 2 devs that he funds. Then it's me part-time. My co-founder, Thomas Block, he helps out a bit with the cryptography. But very much like just a hobbyist help out. So it's a small team. So the focus is really just having a web client and a bunch of Docker containers so people can run the infrastructure. I think if people want to build mobile wallets and stuff for it, that would be outside. And we're not thinking that, to be honest. I had a brief chat the other day with the Mutiny guys, which I think you've mentioned. They made, because they're moving into supporting federations. And if Civkit gets enough transaction, we basically bounce some ideas. I'm a big fan of what Mutiny have done. Maybe they would support it. But again, there has to be enough adoption to make it worth them throwing some energy into it and stuff. But there's no one's may, again, if they have a big enough adoption, they may do a proprietary wallet for that.
No, I just downloaded, like a friend of mine was telling me about Mutiny, and I just downloaded the wallet and was playing around with like the eCash features a little bit, and that's like my first time ever actually using eCash, and it seems like a cool little feature. They could make it, I guess, more like easier to understand, I guess, like.
Yeah, I mean, Mutiny are interesting. I mean, I didn't know much about them, but I knew one of the guys on it, Ben DeCarmen. I did a panel with him years ago on privacy at Bitcoin Miami, and it was originally they were going to be a privacy wallet going from CoinJoin to Lightning. Then they went really Lightning, and now people realize maybe going full blown Lightning is pretty hard for retail. They've moved more into Fedi, but I actually respect that because this is a fast moving environment. You have to adopt, and you have to accept that there are things that we thought a few years ago that may be wrong or maybe didn't plan out the way the ecosystem expected. I mean, who could predict ordinals? I certainly got that wrong. I didn't think it would keep on growing. I thought the hype would be gone within a couple of months.
Yeah, so did I, to be honest. I didn't think that right around the halving we'd be seeing that impact that it had on fees. I mean, I saw something where like fees were like $200 like the day of the halving because of runes.
But I don't think they're going away. And then look, sidechains are back now. There's a new layer 2 every week. I mean, I don't think any of them will stick around.
There's a lot. There's like 50 different layer 2 projects right now. I saw that some guy made a website and I bookmarked it on Twitter, but like if you look, there's probably like 20 different roll-up projects happening, and then there's a bunch of other like side chains that some of them are like proof of stake side chains that have like EVM, like Web3 compatibility and stuff, on top of Bitcoin. So it's super interesting to see. Like, I mean, I like the experimentation. Like you said, it's good to have experimentation and innovation drives further innovation. So I like to see it, but it's just crazy how like, like a year ago, there was maybe like RSK Liquid, and then that's probably maybe Mercury Layer and Lightning. Like those were the only like layer 2s, and now there's like 50 different ones that are all in development. So
yeah, that's interesting you mentioned RSK because I haven't. I'm not shilling RSK, but yeah, none of them are more innovative than the things we've got already, which is
with
more expensive.
RSK, they struggled to like get adoption outside of Latin America. Like most of the people I know that use it are in Latin America. Like the team's based in Argentina, I think, and then
Yeah, showing I did meet the guy, the designer behind, is it Sergio? I met him he did a presentation I used to live in the US. He did a presentation in New York around 2015.
okay,
And his ideas. Shows how, yeah, he's an OG. He was, I think he was building Bitcoin in the early days,
yeah,
2010.
he's been involved for a long time.
Yeah, very gracious guy. You know, we had a beer afterwards. We explained what we were doing because we were doing side chains as well originally at Commons Block.
Okay.
Yeah, he gave us a lot of his time and energy. Good guy, wealth
And
of knowledge.
why did you guys pivot away from the sidechain idea, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, we forked elements, and we were building like more bespoke side chains for certain clients, and we had one or two clients, but it was hard. Remember, this is 2018-19. We were going to like, you know, I'd say institutional clients, and you're going to laugh at this, but we were in competition with the Tezoses and the EOSes, and we would go there asking, not for much money. We'd say, look, give us a couple of $100,000, which was, by the time you've paid all the devs and stuff, wouldn't give us much change. And then EOS and Tezos would give them $1 million in tokens just to build on them. So we were like, there was no adoption. Yeah. And I think what we were building, there probably wasn't much demand. And in hindsight, running a sidechain is not easy. I mean, this is when I get upset when people say, well, why don't you have a federation for Mercury? And I said, well, find me other teams that are going to invest the time, energy to run a federation node. And I know, obviously, because we forked elements, I've spoken to the Blockstream guys over the years. It's hard to run a federation node, and they've thrown a lot of money into building a hardened HSM that runs 24/7. That's fully available. That's secure. It's not easy.
I would say like Blockstream has struggled with finding adoption as well. Like Liquid right now, they're using it to do these like securities and stuff that they're going to launch, like tokenized securities, but they've been trying for years to get Bitcoiners to use it, and it wasn't until like Aqua Wallet came out, like maybe like 3 months ago, that people started using it to like swap, to like fund Lightning channels and stuff like that. Whereas beforehand, it was pretty much like a ghost town. And like with RSK, like there's some adoption in Latin America. There's like Tropicus, there's Money on Chain that are like Latin American projects that are using RSK, but like the adoption is also very, very minimal. I don't see a lot of people seeking out side chains. Like I think they just go to other coins instead.
Yeah, and I've ended up arguing with Paul Stortz on Twitter, but this is why I'm not pro drive chains, because if we'd have seen adoption on RSK and Liquid, I think that would be a valid argument. And I have a lot of respect for him technically. I think what he's designed on drive chains is really good. He's definitely a smart guy, but you need to see that adoption first. And Lightning wasn't doing much till Zaps and Nostra as well. That looked pretty dull.
I don't know if that's because like the technical challenges of building stuff with Lightning or what, but Lightning is also like people just, instead of going to Lightning from Bitcoin, they'll just go from Bitcoin to like Litecoin or Ethereum or some other coin. Like that's what I've seen play out in real life.
Yeah, one of the reasons I partnered, I'd known Ray Youssef for a couple of years. Yeah, I met him a few times when I was in New York. One of the reasons I partnered with him, he's one of the few people. Yeah, he's controversial. You probably understand that, but he's one of the few people that got, I'd say, non-Bitcoiners to use Bitcoin, and he did it in places like Nigeria and stuff. And I think for whatever magic he has, he managed to get that adoption. I think that's so hard, and that's why I thought it was worth spending some time on Civkit and seeing if he could do it again, see if he could keep the momentum there, because I think that's very important.
I think so too, and like I think the peer-to-peer market, like I don't think people like in developed countries understand how huge the peer-to-peer market is in Latin America and Africa and Asia, in some of these countries where people have like very weak currencies, and that's like one of their only lifelines to avoid devaluation. That's why people in Africa are like actually spending Bitcoin. Like if you look at like Bitcoin transactions under $1,000 for economic use. Like the statistics show that like Africa has like 80% of the Bitcoin transactions.
I found working on Civkit, I try not to understand it, and I have my reasons why, because I have a bias, clearly. I've always lived in the West, I lived in Europe or the US. I try not to understand it because it's money. Everyone's got a bias on money, but they have just a different mindset to it, and I think that helps. And there are companies that have been successful in Africa. Ray would be the first to tell you Binance came with peer-to-peer Binance and whipped Paxful Haas. And Tron did the same thing. So you've got to let go of your bias and just build what they tell you.
I would say that's true here in Latin America too. Like if you go to like Argentina or Venezuela, like one of these places that really has like an economic crisis, they're all using Tether on Tron and they're all trading peer-to-peer on Binance. Like that's the reality of the situation.
So what's your reason for that? I mean, Ray's told me various things and he's public about it.
I would say that the volatility for Bitcoin is too much for somebody that, like if you make like $200 or $300 a month and then Bitcoin, like you put your money into Bitcoin and Bitcoin loses like 30-40% of its value and you still have rent to pay, you still have bills to pay, like that's catastrophic. Like you need that stability. Because Tron was the cheapest one at the time. Now I think Polygon may be cheaper than Tron, like as far as sending Tether around, but everybody's already using Tether on Tron. So like there's wallets that have Tether on Tron, like integrated, all the peer-to-peer platforms have Tether on Tron. And I think that's just why like Tron is comparably fast to like a Lightning Network transaction, even though it's totally centralized, right? So like
if someone ever gets Tether working on Lightning, which you probably know better than me, there's a lot of people trying to do that. Is that a killer app or is that necessary?
I would say that if they did it like 5 years ago, it probably would be a killer app, but I think there's a huge network effect around Tron right now with Tether. And that's going to be hard to overcome. I mean, if you could do it better on Lightning, then yeah, it would be a killer app. But right now, like I said, like there's wallets that have Tether on Tron integrated into them, and like people are using that. Like they get paid, they'll work remote.
Because some of the peer-to-peer guys I've spoken to, they do complain about, believe it or not, they complain about Tron fees being $1.50,
they've risen now. Like they used to be like $1 or like 50 cents, and now I think they're a little bit more pricey. And there's also like cheaper versions of Tether now. There's like Tether on like Polygon and probably like other blockchains that are cheaper. But the thing is, there's a network effect with Tron. Like since it was like the first mover to adopt Tether, like I would say that like 80% of the developing world that uses crypto is using Tether on Tron.
So you're not bullish on Bitcoin eating into that?
Not with the fees the way they are. There needs to be like an economic way for people to transact. Like I know that nobody in Latin America or Africa is going to be lining up to use Bitcoin when the fees are like $100 or $100 or more. Like that's just not realistic. Like $100 is like rent for some people or groceries for like 2 weeks. It's a lot of money in a developing economy. So if Lightning could have like Tether on Lightning, or maybe like eCash could, an eCash token could be Tether and it could be instant and cheap, then I could see it being a better alternative. But like I said, there's a huge network effect that needs to be overcome.
I'm casually looking at the Lightning Tether projects because there's obviously quite a lot of innovation happening there.
Yeah. Which one's your favorite so far? Do you like Taro, what Lightning Labs is working on? There's RGB.
I did spend some time again, I'm biased because of the people I spoke to. I did spend a bit of time with the RGB guys at Bitfinex. They were at Honey Badger. An Italian guy I met there.
Federico.
So he's the guy. He seemed the most well thought. He seemed a bit more pragmatic and a bit more well thought out. That was the one that resonated with me. That's the one I kind of follow a bit more. I think I met him in September. He said live in a few months. It's now March, which I totally respect. I mean, look, I think because Mercury probably took us a month to design, a year to productionize. That's the world we live in.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's a lot of work. I know they have like a wallet called Iris Wallet that is an RGB wallet, but I don't know like at what stage of development it's in. I know it exists, but it's probably like a very early stage of the wallet.
And then was it pair credits was supposed to be out this year?
I'm not sure like what's going on with that, but they were talking about it when I was at Adopting Bitcoin in November in El Salvador. They were talking about it a lot, but I really don't know like at what stage it is on the roadmap. I know like Synonym, which is John Carvalho's Lightning wallet, Bitkit, is supposed to like have like pair credit integrated into it at some point. But Nicholas, thank you so much for coming on the show. Like it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being so generous with your time, staying
Enjoyed
here
it.
for so long.
Thanks for having us. Yeah,
Indeed.
that's great.
Do you want to like give Mercury Layer's information, Civkit's information, your information, like as far as like social media goes and stuff like that? So if people are interested, they can follow what you're working on.
Yeah, so Mercury Layer, mercurylayer.com. We have a Telegram group which we try and make it very dev friendly. If you want to build on us, if you want to work with us, things you don't like, please come. My Twitter's Gregory_Nico is at x.com. I try and do updates about Mercury and Civkit whenever there's something interesting. Yeah, Civkit as well. We have a quite active Telegram group. We're trying to get a release out for that in the next few weeks. We really want traders to play with that. But those are the two things I mainly focus on. I mean, Commerce Block itself, which is actually my employer, we do Lightning work, so we're not anti-Lightning. Lightning's going to be used in Civkit from day one. We're integrating other bits and bobs like Fedi. Yeah, we want to be building apps not necessarily tied to any protocol, but those are the protocols I know well, Lightning, Mercury Layer. That's something I've designed myself, worked in it from day one.
Amazing work, man. I'm looking forward to seeing the initial iteration of Civkit, and then also looking forward to this Lightning Latch integration that you guys are working on for Mercury there.
Thank you. Yeah, enjoyed this. I'll come back whenever you want.
Indeed. Well, I will have you back for sure. Thanks so much, man.